Hi, it's Tom, K3YH, and Roll's going to take it over to do a presentation about QSLing. Go ahead.
Okay, I always want to uh, acknowledge that Nick K3NY used to give this presentation, and he's kind of was the inspiration for it. I've expanded it quite a bit, but a lot of it's still his ideas. So this is about QSLing and contact confirmation. Years ago, we would have just said QSLing because that was the only way to quote confirm contacts, but nowadays there's other ways, as you probably all know. So here's an outline. We're going to talk. Hey, it's me. I also have to talk history. Why QSL? Basic info that you need. How do you fill out a card? Some ideas for designing your own cards. Where to get blank cards. How to receive cards. How to make sure you get the ones you're looking for. How to send them to U.S. stations. How to send them to DX stations. Alternatives to paper QSLs. Then what do I do with them now that I have them? That's what my wife keeps saying. What are you going to do with them? Okay, here's a brief history of QSL cards. You can see some on the wall up here, these old call signs. There's some spare tubes. Isn't that cool? So in reception reports were sent out by commercial stations in the early days of wireless, back in the 1900 turn of the century. And in 1916, a ham with the call sign 3TQ, this is before they put prefix letters, I wrote a letter to the ARL, and he said, gee, it'd be useful if people would send postcards with reception reports if you hear a ham station. It'd be nice to get one of those. And he hadn't seen much mention of it. But nothing came of it. In 1919, another ham, who was an early cartoonist for QST, referred to using postcards to let the other fellow know you heard his signals. And he said he'd been doing this since before World War I, and he sort of gets the idea for gets the credit for originating the idea of sending QSL cards. QSL means I can confirm receipt of your transmission. QSL means the same as Roger, received. So we call them QSL cards because we're confirming the contact we made. It's more than a listening report. Most of the time it's a confirmation of an actual QSO. However, they're not called QSO cards. They're called QSL cards. I've heard people call them QSO cards. That is not correct. So why would you send them? Well, there's a tradition. Some people say exchanging QSL cards is the completion of a QSO. It's the final respect the other person. And, not so much anymore. Social aspect, sending your personalized card to somebody is kind of cool. Collecting them, displaying them in your shack, promoting your club, your city, your event, your company, and maybe most important, but being circumvented by some online techniques, proof of a QSO, proof of a contact for awards. Many awards require some proof that you actually did make the contact that you're claiming, the country that you said you worked or the state or whatever. So what's the basic information that has to go on a QSL card? Well, here's a simple QSL card. Usually your call sign in big letters and where are you? Maybe your county, for people who are county collectors. Your address if they want to send you a card back. Then the basic contact information. Confirming QSO with, there you would put the call sign of the station that you contacted, the date, the day, the month, and the year. Notice day, month, year, rather than month, day, year, which only the U.S. does. Time in UTC, the frequency in megahertz, at least the band. The signal report, that's important. And the mode that you're in. That's important also because people may be trying to work all states on digital, so they need to know what mode it was. Now you also might want to put some brag information or other information up here about what clubs you're a member of, like he's a 1010 member, etc. He's on the DXCC honor roll. He's worked DXCC low power. He has 6-band, worked all states, etc. What should the card not contain? Well, just think before you do it. Religious statements are not generally appreciated. Political statements are not generally appreciated. And off-color or other inappropriate humor or images. Remember, there are hams of all ages, genders, nationalities, and races out there. What you may think is funny, somebody else may not. Best to steer away from that. I would say 1 out of 500 cards I get may have a possibly poor taste image on it, but nothing really serious. So, to fill out the card, always use Zulu time, UTC, never local time. Be sure your computer clock is accurate, or your shack clock is accurate. And make sure the UTC date is correct. Remember, the date changes at 0 Zulu, which is on the East Coast here right now, 8 o'clock in the evening. So after 8 o'clock, it's tomorrow. Write legibly. Make sure the call sign is clear. It helps the card sorter at the bureaus if you make it clear and obvious. And I say, ask me how I know. I am a card sorter, and so it really slows me down. I have to try to read the tiny little cramped up in the corner someplace call sign to get the card where it's going. Make sure you get all the information on there. Don't cross out mistakes for anything having to do with the QSO mode because altered cards are generally not accepted. Down here at the bottom is a real solution. If you use a logging program, and we'll talk more about that, it will generate labels or actually print on the card for you, saving you the trouble of worrying about all this legibility issue. So here's just some quick design ideas if you haven't seen QSL cards. Here's some simple ones if you want to not spend a whole lot of money. The printers, and I'm going to tell you where you can find printers who make these cards. They have stock artwork that you can use, often flags for various states and so forth and countries. So these simple cards are relatively inexpensive and adequate. They do the job. They don't look too bad. A large percentage of the cards I get, I would say, are of this type. Some people get fancy and put information on two sides. We do. This is our club card for K3NEM at the museum, and the front side is a picture of a radar system that was of the type that was at Pearl Harbor when the attack happened in 1941. On the back side is the information about this antenna in small print here, plus the information about our address and so forth. And then there's a blank space up here where we can put a label containing the information for the QSO generated by our program, which we'll talk about. Make sure you if you do this, make sure you put your call sign on the back as well as the front to help that sorter so he doesn't have to keep flipping over. Some folks like to show off their antennas. Here's some examples of that. By the way, you say, where's the antenna? Well, this guy in China, his antenna is like right down here on top of the apartment house. Here's a station in Italy showing his antennas. Very nice picture. Station in Canada and one in Japan. Some very nice towers and antennas. We hams always like to look at that stuff. Some people show pictures of themselves or their hobbies or their pets. The station in Addis Ababa. He spelled it a little different than I would have. Ethiopia. He has his picture on there. This guy also rides, I guess, and there's a picture of a dog down here. Stations. This person's a pilot also, so that's kind of cool. Views of the countryside or the local area are always a great subject. Here's China, Malaysia, England, Chile. Some beautiful stuff. I get lots of these, and I find that non-hams often enjoy looking at these types of cards. They do not particularly care to look at antennas, nor do they care to look at these stock art ones, but they do like these. For special events, often special event stations will print special cards telling what the special event was, maybe with a special call sign. Tom and I like Hedy Lamarr a lot because she was a inventor and invented spread spectrum and was also a movie star in the 40s. And so they celebrated Hedy Lamarr Day with her patent and her picture and a call sign. And not her call sign, but a call sign of the station. And here's somebody celebrating 50 years of Woodstock and so forth. And this husband and wife has their own set of one single card for both. They just put check markers which one. This is not rare. I've seen quite a few cards where where multiple members of the family will have the same card and just a check box for which one of them you've actually contacted. And a lot of people have some artistic talent and they draw their own cards. Some better than others. This one up here on the left, I don't know. I guess that's okay. And so you can see that this person here is quite talented. And planes, cars, and ships, very popular things. Here's some planes. Here's some cool cars. Here's some vessels. Now notice this one up here. This call sign doesn't look like a ham call. ONL 4823. So this is not a ham. This is a shortwave listener. In fact, it says SWL shortwave listener. And so he's heard you, and he doesn't have a transmitter, but he wants you to send him a card acknowledging that you did indeed were on that frequency at the time he heard you. I'll talk about that a little bit more. If you're a member of a club, your club may have cards that all the members can get. This is the card I use actually from the Potomac Valley Radio Club, except it has my call in here, but otherwise it looks exactly the same, except for the information on here. Everything else is the same. This is a ARRL. All the people who work at ARRL have cards that they share with this red format. They're a little bit different now. Here's the Yankee Clipper Contest Club, another contest club like PBRC, and here's the Frankfurt Amateur Radio Club in Pennsylvania, another big contest group. And there are lots of clubs where their members all use the same card with their own call signs and information on it. National flags and state flags are very popular. This one on the lower right, I have a call sign in Antigua and Bermuda, and my call is V26RA, but otherwise it looks exactly like this because the Bermuda flag is just so pretty that you can't resist it. The Maryland flag I think is gorgeous also, and WA3JR is showing off the Maryland flag here in his card. You can see these others, all state and national flags. Here's a real fancy one from a D-Expedition. Some of the D-Expeditions send very fancy cards. This one actually has four sides. It folds open and then has both sides. So this is the front and this is the back. So it's actually got four sides, and you can put multiple contacts. So here, this is the W7LR, and he made many contacts on different bands. He puts them all on one card. So if you send for a card from Swains Island from N8S, you might have gotten this card. So with some cool pictures and all the information that you need, and plus all the sponsors for the D-Expedition got their emblems on there. Here's a few interesting cards from famous hams. This one is from King Hussein of Jordan. Not Saddam Hussein, but King Hussein of Jordan. And his call was JY1. I have his card, as a matter of fact. And Jim Croce had a call sign, WN3OQW. Here is Tim Allen on Last Man Standing. Remember, Amateur Radio was part of the show. Occasionally, there was a station there, and they had a live station. This is the call sign, and there's a picture of Tim Allen. And of course, one of the most famous celebrity hams is Gene Shepard, and this is his as a kid. This is his QSL card. It's actually when he was a teenager, and this is kind of cool. If you don't know who Gene Shepard is, you need to look him up on the internet, listen to his talks about everything under the sun. They used to do on WR radio, but lots of cool stuff about amateur radio that you would not normally hear on the radio, on the commercial radio. Okay, where to get your cards? Well, often when you get your license, you'll get a mailing from a printer who says, "Congratulations on getting your new call. How would you like me to print your cards for you?" But you can make your own cards. There's software available to help you create a QSL card that you can print. Just Google "make your own QSL cards" and you'll find a bunch. Here's a couple links. These will be live when we put this on the internet. And here's a whole list of make your own card sites. So this is software where it lets you pick your art and put in your standard information, get your call sign displayed properly, you can design it the way you want, and then print each one individually if you want. There are dozens of sources for printed QSL cards, and as usual, eHAM is your friend in getting reviews and lists of these various printers. I just picked these two at random. I have nothing particular to say about them. I just wanted to have two examples of printers that do make QSL cards. K3NEM, our club, and I are very satisfied with Tony, LZ1JZ. He's in Bulgaria. That may make you think, well, I'm not sure I want to deal with Bulgaria. It's fine. We've done it for decades. Had never had a problem. Tony's great. His printing is relatively cheap. His quality is very good. He can do anything from simple cards. He prints my PVRC club cards very inexpensively, but he'll also do multiple sides and photos and anything you want. He also printed my flag for the V26 Antigua card, and it looks just like that one that you saw there in the picture earlier. The money is all handled through a ham in the United States, so you're not mailing money overseas. It works great. Check him out. Now, what about receiving QSL cards? Well, to save postage expense for DX, that is out of country QSLs, many countries have what are called incoming QSL bureaus, sometimes spelled B-U-R-O for short, bureau. And the way this works is that rather than send a card to an individual in the country, you send all the cards to hams that you've contacted in that country to a single address. And then at that address, they sort the cards and periodically send them to the members of the bureau. Some of these, anybody can send them self-addressed stamped envelopes or money, and they will mail out the cards to them for no charge. Others require membership, like the Deutschland Amateur Radio Club, DARC, in Germany. If you aren't a member of DARC, you don't get cards through the bureau. Bureaus do not generally handle QSOs within the same country. In other words, German to German or US to US would not. US has incoming bureau. In fact, I'm a sorter for the third region for call signs after the three that start with R. Ted is a sorter also in the third region. So all cards with a 3 in them come to the third region, and they're distributed to us sub-sorters, and then we send them out to folks. You do not have to be a member of the ARRL to get cards through the ARRL incoming service. All of them, the call areas all work their bureaus the way they want to work them, and they have different rules, kind of. And so if you're going to work any DX at all, you should definitely sign up with your bureau so that if there are any cards that do come in, that you'll get them. Go to this link, go to ARRL incoming QSL service, and learn what your call area does. It's not where you live, it's where your call sign is. So if you have a 3 call sign, you want to see what the third region does. And even individual sorters within the third region have their own ways of doing business. They're not drastically different. So the methodology does depend on the bureau or even the sorter, as I said. Usually, people will accept self-addressed stamped envelopes. I love self-addressed stamped envelopes. Some of the sorters hate them. Some of them tolerate them. Others will say, "Please send me money." I will accept money also. Some accept PayPal. I have reluctantly accepted PayPal. I don't particularly like doing it. Anyway, if you work DX, establish an account with your incoming bureau. At least send them a self-addressed stamped envelope, at least one. And we'll talk about envelopes here in a minute. How to send a card to a U.S. station. Now, you can't use the bureau for incoming for U.S. stations. So you want to mail directly to other hams. And if you want to find an address, you want to go to QRZ.com. That's the best site for sure to find mailing addresses. They keep this updated, and it's good for anywhere in the world as well as U.S. if there's an address there. You should, as a courtesy, pay postage both ways. That is, send them a self-addressed stamped envelope. Don't forget, if you're not sending to the United States, they can't use U.S. stamps. Sending self-addressed stamps to Canada with U.S. stamps will not work. They can't mail stamps to Canada with U.S. stamps. And put your card in there, and then put that inside an envelope and mail it to them. Pretty simple. And by the way, if you get such a card, you should answer it. Here's QRZ.com. Here's what it looks like when you bring up the site. You type the call sign up here where it says K3NEM. That would take you to this page. By the way, this information is out of date here, Tom, so we need to update that.
I'll talk to the club secretary about that.
And the address up here is wrong now too. So I don't know. We have to do something about the addresses sometime soon, I guess. Anyhow, it'll take you here. And by the way, I'm the trustee for K3NEM, so my name shows up here.
Everything to you or me. I said, so people will send it to you or me.
Yeah, either one. Doesn't matter. Okay. What matters is the address is right. Okay. So anyway,
I will say quickly, just so you don't get too wound up about it, we are still receiving mail at that address.
Okay.
So we're okay for now.
Okay. Now about stationery, a standard QSL in the United States and almost every country is 3.5 by 5.5 inches. However, the Japanese cards and a few other cards are bigger. The Japanese standard size is 3.9 by 5.8, and they don't fit in standard envelopes. So make sure that probably you want a little bit larger envelope than, say, this one here, because these don't fit. The Japanese cards, if you get it, they won't fit. 99% of the other cards, 99.99% of the other cards will fit, but hardly any of the JAs will fit in these small envelopes. You have to accommodate this size. Don't be careful when you send self-addressed stamped envelopes, and you probably want to send, enough to hold various numbers of cards. And I won't go into the details of how many cards you can get and what size envelopes that'll all happen when you contact your sorter. But be aware that if it's bigger than these dimensions, you're no longer in the normal first class mail schedule. You're what's called a flat, and the cost goes way up per ounce. So you don't want to be more than 1/4 of an inch thick. You don't want to be bigger than either one of these two dimensions. So how to send cards to DX. Here's a global forever stamp, getting to be really expensive. So there are lots of ways to do that. Here they are, direct to the hams in the other countries, to the incoming bureaus, which we just talked about. Use an outgoing bureau service that'll send cards out for you, so you don't have to do it. Use QSL managers. I'll talk about that. And there's this new system which is great called the OQRS, the online QSL request system. I'll talk about all these in in some detail here. So if you're going to do direct, where do you send it to? QRZ.com will tell you again. You could also try Googling the call. W3UR has a web page associated with his daily DX, which is called routes.html, and it'll tell you if there's a way to mail, a different way other than the standard address to get the card to somebody. Often that is through a QSL manager, which we'll talk more about later. DX Lab Suite is part of a logging program suite of programs, and one of those parts, DX Lab Suite is the suite of programs, and one of those parts is Pathfinder. And what Pathfinder does is give you multiple ways to, do I have a copy of it? Yes, here it is. Multiple ways to get the card. So if you type the card up here, this is call book address, and so it will allow you, there's details here on how it works, but it allows you to use all these sources to get addresses. IK3QAR is a ham who keeps a very extensive list of QSL managers. Buck is a Buckmaster is a publisher now, does it by software that provides addresses for hams all around the world, as does F6CYB. Anyway, if you get the DX Lab Suite, if you decide to use that program for your logger, and we'll talk about that on the night we do logging programs, this will be helpful to you. Now, there's some things to be careful of if you are mailing directly overseas. Don't put call signs on the outside. The reason is that in some post offices in some countries, they see cards with call signs, and they say, oh, there might be money in this, because people are sending money for return postage, and so the letter never quite makes it to where it's going. Print neatly, don't forget the country name, and use U.S. Global postage stamps. Inside the envelope, put your QSL card, an envelope addressed to yourself, and postage payment in the form of $2 or $3 US. Foreign stamps are if you can find them, are also another way to go with a self-addressed stamped envelope. There's a thing called international reply coupons. We'll talk about them briefly in a minute, but they're pretty much no longer used. So this may seem like a lot of money, but it costs almost $2 to mail an overseas stamp in the United States now, and more in other countries because we're cheaper than most. So here's the global U.S. Forever stamp. Right now they're $1.70. They were less than $1 when this first started, the Forever series. The international reply coupons look like this. They were good for airmail postage in any country who was a member of the Universal Postal Union, UPU. They're going to become obsolete in the United States at the end of this year. Already, it's very difficult to buy or redeem these. Most of the postal people don't know what they are even. I would not mess with them. They're pretty much no longer useful. And if you get any, good luck in trying to get stamps for them. Okay. Another thing, send them directly to the bureaus. Remember, there's bureaus all over the world. Here's the list. This is only useful if you have a lot of contacts with, say, Germany or Italy or France, some common countries. If you have enough cards there, it may behoove you to send the cards for that particular country to their bureau. Be aware that this really slows down the process and reduces the probability of you getting your card, because you're not sending a self-addressed envelope. You're just sending your card. It's got to get sorted. It's got to get delivered at the other end. They got to answer it. They're probably going to answer you by the bureau too, because they don't want to spend a lot of money answering your card. So it could take a year to get a card back or longer. This is just a list. It's just to show that there is a list. This list is very long, and not all countries have bureaus. not all entities for DXCC even have regular population, as a matter of fact. We'll talk about that next week. There are outgoing bureaus or outgoing services that will help you with this process. The ARRL has one such bureau. It only accepts cards from ARRL members. Remember, the incoming bureau, anybody. Don't have to be an ARRL member. The outgoing bureau, you have to be a member. If you want to know the procedures in detail, here's the link, arl.org/outgoing QSL service. What they charge, I believe this is still up to date, 10 cards for $3. You will have to pay the postage to get the 10 cards to them, and then also include $3, plus you have to include a label from your QST or some kind of proof that you're an ARL member, I think. At least you used to have to do that. They'll do 11 to 20 cards for $4. This is 2.3 to 2.5 ounces using a number 10 envelope. Then they have bulk rates for 21 or more cards. It's a 3-ounce minimum, and it's $1.75 per ounce, which means the minimum bulk charge is $5.25. Now they will mail these cards to a bureau. In fact, here's a picture of the outgoing bureau sorting table up at ARL headquarters. They will handle cards only to other bureaus. So if the country doesn't have a bureau, you can't use this technique. In fact, that's what this says right here. There are about 225 entities with bureaus. There are 115 that do not. Most of those are extremely rare countries where there are few, if any, hams regularly there. And you probably are going to want to use a QSL manager for those services, and we'll talk about that. Remember, not all hams receive cards by the bureau, so if you send them by the outgoing bureau, some of them will never get where they're going because the people never sent self-addressed stamped envelopes, or they weren't a member of DARC in the case of Germany, or they didn't send in money, or whatever, they didn't get the cards. So there are 15 countries where you have to be a member of the equivalent of the ARRL in that country in order for the cards to be forwarded, and they're pretty big countries, including France, Germany, Hungary, Italy, Japan, Poland, Russia, Portugal, Sweden. There's a lot of hams there, and so that means that if they're not a member of their national organization, they're not going to get the card. It'll just go in the trash. For a full list of international bureaus, there's a link. So if you're not an ARL member and you want to use an outgoing bureau, K3FN, I think he's still doing this. Seems very expensive. You send your filled out card to him. For $5 a card, he will send it to the station directly or to a manager. For $1 a card, he will send it to the bureau. Obviously, this is not as cheap as ARRL. He will do this for free for handicapped, deaf, or blind folks. Add registered mail fees. He will do that for some DX areas, because if you don't send registered mails to some places, the odds of the mail getting through are pretty small. Here's the link to K3FN's service. I've never used it. I can't tell you anything about it other than this is the information I found about it. Don't have any personal experience. There are two other options. It turns out that the Spanish and German national organizations will handle cards for anybody, not just their own countries. You can upload them in ADEF. Remember, ADEF is the, you may know or you may not know, is the standard amateur log file format that practically every logger will output and input, so that you can switch between loggers and programs and things. So you just upload them the file and pick out a design, and they'll print the cards. Germany, if you go online and look at what DARC has, they have this fantastic setup for printing cards and putting addresses and putting in the information. It's all automated. It's really cool. There are discounts for members of the URE in Spain or DARC in Germany, but non-members can also use these services. Here's links to them. Now, finally, we've been talking about QSL managers. So what exactly are QSL managers? Many rarer DX stations have somebody who handles their cards for them. This is because they work so many people who want their cards because of their rarity that they need help with it. Also, many of them are in places where the postal service is non-existent or very poor. Many of the times they're not going to be there after a short time because they're only there for a de-expedition. So they know you're sending the card to them there because they're back home again. So the QSL manager is a way around all that stuff. And it lowers the cost for us wanting the card. And it's much faster and much more reliable than going through the bureau. Almost certainly, if you send to a QSL manager, you're going to get the card. The QSLs are sent to the manager who checks the log that he receives from the DX station and then returns the card to you. They may request a self-addressed stamped envelope, or they may want money. And in some cases, the return cards may go through the bureau. Managers will usually say how this is being handled, and there's information online to tell you. If you're lucky, that QSL manager will be in the United States if you're a U.S. person, or in your country if you aren't. So that means you can send domestic mail to them and receive domestic mail back a heck of a lot cheaper than if you have to send your card, say, to England and then receive a card back from England, paying the postage both ways, plus the price of the card, plus the price of the envelope, and all that. It all's adding up. That's why I just said this. So I think everything I just said here. Check the station's QRZ page. They may indicate all the details about how you do this, how much money they want, where you want it sent. It can cost anything up to $5 or more for a single card, and it's somewhat risky. We finally got a card from Iran many years ago. It probably cost us $30 for that card before it was over, because twice it got lost on the way. Finally, I talked to the guy on the radio. I said, "We still haven't received your card." He said, "Look, I sent it to you twice." He said, "I'm going to send it to you again." And he emailed me a picture of the card in the envelope and the address on the outside and the stamps on it. And we did get that. So it's somewhere along the line. It's never made it. The mail service really, really bad. Okay. Where do you find QSL managers? Well, your logging program may do this for you automatically. Most of them do have some links to QSL manager lists. You saw the one that I talked about the DX Suite. They have that special program there that's very extensive for finding addresses. QRZ.com will tell you information often about what the QSL manager link is. You can Google a call, and sometimes that'll help you. W3UR's page that I mentioned before for the Daily DX has lots of QSL manager lists. IK3 QAR I mentioned, he's kind of a standard. I usually go to him. Not all of his information is right. I'm in there as a QSL manager for some station from Korea in Antarctica who I have no connection with at all, but I get a card from them about once every year. And it's because IK3QAR keeps putting it out there. These are usually 10-year-old contacts. The Daily DX QSL Manager listing through January of this year is for old cards is available on this link. Okay, and finally, you can get modern and use the OQRS. This is an alternative to sending cards in order to get cards. The thing is, the DX expeditions don't want your card. So the fact that you send them the card is only your card is only to them a request for their card. So this eliminates that. It says, don't send us the card, just send us the money, save the postage, send the money by PayPal, do it all online, get the card back, we'll mail it to you. If depending on how much you want to spend, we'll send it to your bureau, maybe for free, maybe for $1, or we'll mail it to you if you really want a card with, you know, the real card from the DXpedition. It may cost you $3 to $5 for that. Some of that money may be going to help defray the costs of the expedition. It costs like what, $1 million to send those folks to Bouvet Island. So clearly they could use a few bucks help there. Although nobody made them do it, but we're sort of glad they did. Anyway, this is a great way to get cards. Fast and cheaper than most ways. You may think this is expensive, but this is a lot cheaper than a $1.74 or $1.70 stamp and an envelope and a card sent to a QSL manager in another country, who then will get around to sending you a card which he'll charge you all the expenses to get back again. M0URX has been in the QSL business for quite a while. He's a very, very active QSL manager. He has over 300 call signs that he manages. So lots of times you're getting your card from M0URX. He has what he calls the bespoke OQRS, which can be found at this link, or you can just search M0URX OQRS, and he'll do the same thing that OQRS will do for you for any of the call signs he manages. And if you want to know which ones those are, here's a list here. But all those other sources will tell you if M0URX is the manager. If the DXpedition has this guy as a manager, you're in luck. Reliable, inexpensive, dependable person. Okay, there's an alternative to paper QSLs. That one is kind of one right there, but they are sending you paper QSL back. So here's an alternative where you don't have a paper QSL in either direction. And the most well-known and official of all these is ARRL's Logbook of the World, LOTW. It's free. You do not have to be a member of the ARRL to use it. All you have to do is sign up for it, and you should if you work DX. And what happens is you send them your logs from your logger. Some loggers send every single contact that you make one at a time to the Log of the World, and that's fine. I have to bundle them up every now and then, but it's all done on the internet. There's no mail involved. There's no cost involved. There are 200,000 plus people doing this. When your log and the log of the station you think you worked both indicate that the contact happened within a narrow time frame, it will be marked as confirmed, and useful for any ARRL award. I've worked all states, for instance, and also worked all zones, worked prefixes, although work prefixes is not sure that's because CQ Magazine went out of business. I'm not sure what the status of WPX is right now. But DXCC, VUCC, worked all states. All those can be confirmed by sending your logs to LOTW. State to state, inside a state, anybody. And all they accept both ADIF and Cabrillo format. Cabrillo format is a contest logging program format. You need some software on your computer. They have it for Windows. They have it for the Apple operating systems and Linux as well. Many DXpeditions upload instantly, real time, to Log of the World. It's not rare, and it's fun to work somebody, go check Log of the World, and you've already got a QSL confirmation. You don't get a card, but you've got proof that you did indeed work that station. It can happen within minutes. It can happen within days. Sometimes it can happen within years. Many contesters, after a contest, upload their logs as a matter of course. It doesn't cost anything, and it's kind of the play thing to do. And just to give you an example, I have over 300,000 contacts in my computer. I can't set my paper logs up that way unless I enter them in my computer. But going back to the 90s, I have 300,000 QSOs plus, and 135,000 of them roughly have been confirmed. So you can see it's not quite half of all the contacts that I've made over the years have been confirmed, and that's going back to 1994. In fact, I got on the DXCC honor roll without having ever had a QSL card submitted to prove it. I used just confirmations on Log of the World. 300 and, what is it? Is it 340 countries? 332 countries, something like that. Okay, so you'll want to do this in more detail. You're not going to remember all this, but just to give you a feeling for what you have to do, you have to download and install a little program called TQSL, Trusted QSL, and then you have to request a call sign certificate that you store on your computer. Doesn't cost anything, but they want to make sure that you really are who you say you are. I mean, this whole thing falls apart if the confirmations aren't correct. So they want to be sure you are who you say they are, so they mail you information to your address. This only happens one time. Then you define your station location, and you submit your log files, and you're underway. It isn't quite that easy, but it isn't horrible either. And here's a link for all the information you need. Plus, if you have trouble, and I have had trouble, not through their fault, but through some problem with my computer, they'll help you with it. They have a pretty good help desk. There's another way you can avoid sending paper QSLs in the mail, and that's called EQSLs, or electronic QSLs. I get emails regularly with EQSLs. They go into the junk. I have no interest in getting these electronic QSLs. They're not good for any awards. I don't feel like printing out the cards that they send. I do answer all paper cards that I get, but I do not answer EQSLs. Here's how it works. And there are a few awards that will accept these EQSLs, but most of them, DXCC and Worked All States and WPX and some others, will not. Actually, CQ Magazine used to accept trusted EQSLs. They had some kind of special thing. I don't know if, since there is no CQ Magazine, I don't know the status of that. I would recommend not doing this, but people do it. So it's popular with some people. Another thing, I don't know if I have a thing in here about it, but QRZ also has another system that they have, QRZ.com, where you can upload your log to QRZ, and they will crisscross the logs just like OQRS, just like LOTW does. I don't participate in that either. A lot of people do. It's just one more thing to send, and I have not done it. I'm kind of a fan of LTW, so that's what I use.
But the QRZ confirmations are also not valid for ARRL, correct?
That's correct, right? They have their own awards.
Yeah, so if you want the ARRL awards for Worked All States or DXCC, you either need to show cards, paper cards, that you received in the mail, or Logbook of the World.
Right.
Or a combination of the two.
And for a fee, QRZ.com will sell you these awards that they have. Of course, that's true of ARL too. They don't give you the awards for free.
Yeah, the awards cost.
Okay, so logging software is a tremendous help, and we're going to have a whole presentation on logging software. Logging software really simplifies QSLing. It does a lot of great stuff, but it'll tell you if you have a card from that station or country as soon as you type in the call sign. And with a single click, when you make a contact, you can mark the QSO to be QSL'd. And you can periodically print labels or print directly onto the card and it's sorted by country the way the outgoing ARL Bureau wants the cards. So if you want a QSL by the ARL Outgoing Bureau, this will line up all the cards for you, sort them in the right order, and all you have to do is mark it that you want to send them a card. Now when you receive a card, you just enter the call, and the software will find the QSO and mark it as having been QSL'd. And if you wanted to, it will mark that QSO for a label or to print on a card, if you wanted to. So when you receive a card from somebody, you just click on the right thing, and then later when you print your labels, the cards answering those QSLs will be printed along with them. So this whole process is really quick. I mean, you can sort through a stack of 100 cards in half an hour, 45 minutes at the most. Some programs will automatically upload to LOTW. Others require some manual intervention, but they help you do it. They also have quick access to information for using the OQRS service. They probably have a QSL manager listed in the logging software. And some of them, many of them actually, automatically access QRZ.com for every contact that you make and show you the QSL information for that station is in a window. We're going to have a session on logging software on May 7th, and we'll talk about all this in a lot more detail. So what about shortwave listeners? I talked about that earlier. Here's a Slovenia shortwave listener card. The S5 is prefix for Slovenia. This RS001 is a number that could come from many different sources. Sometimes it's a club of some kind for shortwave listeners that issues these numbers as if they're call signs, but they're not licenses to operate. They're merely distinguishing identifiers for that particular shortwave listener. I get a couple out of every couple hundred cards I get are these shortwave listener cards. They have all the information that you would normally have in a QSL, except they also indicate who you were talking to. They'll say that he heard you and here's what your signal was. This one actually doesn't look like it has it. Normally it has in here the name of the call sign of the station that you were working. So it'll say to K3RA, and then somewhere down here it would have the call sign of the station I was working when he heard me, and then this is the signal report. He heard me. What band? There's nothing you can do with these except if you like to save them, you can. But there's no award that I know of for collecting these QSL cards. But these folks like to get them, so it's kind of a nice thing to answer. This is saying some of the things I just said. Yeah, typically they start with the ITU prefixes followed by some numbers. This one's from Russia. I think I said all that stuff. So now the question is, I got all these cards. What the heck do I do with them? So my wife keeps saying, what are you going to do with those cards? Well, you might want to store them or display them or both. Remember, they're not a universal size. Remember that these Japanese cards are a bit larger, and some are even a bit larger than that. So when you have a display like this is plastic. This is a sold plastic hanger that holds, how many does it hold? 20, is it? Looks like it's 20 cards. And I used to have my cards on the wall with this, not all my cards, but all the different countries that I work. Um, it's kind of a nice way to display them. The cards are not damaged. They're there if you want to use them for confirmation of awards. They don't have to have holes put in them, and there's no holes that have to go in the wall except for something to hold up the top of the plastic display. And you can buy them online. By the way, just cool, this V26B, that's our contest card call sign from Antigua. That's the station I go down to operate each year for the CQ Worldwide phone. That could be our card. So, file boxes, there are lots of options at Amazon. Shoe boxes, I actually have mine stored in shoe boxes. You can display them in a book. Here's a book here, and you can buy these sheets that you can put in a notebook, and you can get special sheets that fit QSL cards. Again, some of them are not going to fit. Some people still haven't caught on that these outsized cards are a pain in the neck, because they are. If you want one of these wall display holders, here's a source right here with this link. So, QSL, that is, do you acknowledge receipt of my message? Any questions?
Not so far. Any questions, anyone? No questions. Wow, great presentation. Or not.
Everything you wanted to know about QSLing, or probably more than that.
More than enough.
Okay, well, we're finished on time.
Wow, when does that ever happen?
Hardly ever.